Commander Zixthara floated in the control chamber of his flagship, studying the holographic display with growing interest. The massive vessel, nearly 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapons, drifted silently through the void along with 29 other warships. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had expanded across the galaxy using the same proven method: find a primitive world, demonstrate overwhelming force, and accept their surrender. The 12 species that formed the hegemony had perfected this approach. Most civilizations they encountered possessed crude chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. A show of superior technology was usually enough to bring entire worlds to their knees. Those few that resisted were quickly crushed by the combined might of alien technology that was millennia ahead of their own. The sensor readings from the third planet in this system suggested another routine conquest. The electromagnetic signatures indicated a species that had achieved spaceflight but remained confined to their local system. Their energy output suggested a civilization that had not yet mastered fusion power on a planetary scale. Everything pointed to another easy victory for the hegemony. Zixthara's 4 eyes studied the tactical display as his fleet moved closer to the planet the inhabitants called Earth. Intelligence reports suggested the species called themselves humans and had established several colonies on nearby worlds. The population estimates indicated roughly 10 billion individuals scattered across multiple planetary bodies. The approach was standard doctrine. His fleet would position itself in orbit around the primary world and broadcast the standard surrender ultimatum. If the humans were smart, they would recognize the futility of resistance and submit to hegemony rule. If not, a few orbital bombardments would convince them to reconsider their position. The alien commander activated the communication array and prepared to transmit the surrender demand when his sensors detected something unusual. A small vessel was approaching from the direction of the outer planets. The ship appeared to be roughly 100 meters in length, a tiny speck compared to the massive hegemony warships. Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the UES Ranger, watching the alien fleet on his tactical display with growing concern. The scout ship had been conducting a routine patrol of the outer system when the massive alien formation had appeared. Jake had immediately sent a priority message to Earth Command, but the response would take hours to arrive. The Ranger was a typical scout vessel of the United Earth Space Force. Its crew of 12 was trained for reconnaissance and early warning, not combat. The ship carried basic defensive weapons and light armor, designed to survive long enough to report enemy contact rather than engage in prolonged battles. Corporal Lisa Hayes looked up from her sensor station with worry in her eyes. The alien ships were unlike anything in their databases. The energy signatures suggested technology far beyond current human capabilities, and the sheer number of vessels indicated a massive military force. Jake studied the tactical situation carefully. The aliens had positioned themselves in a standard blockade formation around Earth. Their intentions were clear, but he still hoped for a peaceful resolution. The first contact protocols required him to attempt communication. Before taking any hostile action, he activated the communication array and broadcast on standard diplomatic frequencies. His message was simple and direct: identify yourselves, state your intentions, and request permission to establish peaceful contact with Earth authorities. The response came faster than he expected, but it was not what he had hoped for. The alien transmission was filled with arrogance and contempt. The creatures demanded immediate surrender of all human military forces and the submission of Earth to something called the hegemony. They claimed the right to rule over humanity based on their superior technology and threatened orbital bombardment if their demands were not met within one standard. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same determination in their faces that he felt in his heart. The aliens had made their intentions clear, and there was no room for negotiation. They viewed humanity as nothing more than another primitive species to be conquered and enslaved. The lieutenant activated the ship's combat systems and addressed his crew over the internal communication network. The Ranger might be outgunned and outnumbered, but they were not helpless. Every member of the crew had trained extensively for this exact scenario. and they knew their duty. Engineer Pete Collins worked frantically at his station, rerouting power from non-essential systems to weapons and shields. The scout ship's armament was modest by fleet standards, but it included several innovations that might surprise the aliens. The magnetic accelerator cannons could be overcharged for short periods, and the missile systems carried warheads designed to penetrate advanced shielding. The aliens seemed surprised when the small human vessel refused to withdraw. Commander Zixthara had expected the primitive ship to flee immediately upon seeing the size of his fleet. Instead, the humans were moving into an attack position and powering up their weapons. The alien commander felt a mixture of amusement and annoyance. The humans were brave but foolish. Their single small ship could not possibly threaten his massive battle fleet. He decided to destroy the vessel quickly as an example to the rest of their species. Jake watched the alien fleet begin to move into attack formation. The massive ships were impressive, but they appeared to be designed for fighting other large vessels in traditional formation battles. Their movements were predictable and coordinated, following standard military doctrine that emphasized overwhelming firepower over maneuverability. The Ranger accelerated toward the alien fleet at maximum speed. Jake had no intention of engaging in a conventional battle where his ship's weaknesses would be exposed. Instead, he planned to use the scout vessel's superior speed and agility to strike at the aliens' weak points and retreat before they could respond effectively. The first exchange of fire lasted only seconds, but it shocked both sides. The alien energy weapons struck the Ranger's shields with devastating force, but the human ship survived the initial barrage. In response, Jake's gunners targeted the aliens' weapon systems with precision fire that caused significant damage to two of their vessels. Commander Zixthara stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The primitive human ship had somehow penetrated his vessel's defensive systems and caused actual damage. The weapon signatures suggested technology that should not exist among such a young species. The battle continued for nearly an hour, with the small human scout ship darting between the massive alien vessels like an angry insect. Jake used every trick in the manual and several that were not, employing hit-and-run tactics that kept the aliens off balance and prevented them from bringing their full firepower to bear. Lisa Hayes coordinated the ship's defensive systems with skill that impressed even her experienced crew. She managed to keep the shields operational despite repeated hits from alien weapons that should have destroyed them instantly. Her ability to predict enemy targeting patterns allowed the Ranger to avoid several potentially fatal attacks. The aliens found themselves facing an opponent unlike any they had encountered before. The human ship refused to engage in predictable patterns, instead using chaotic maneuvers that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated. Every time they thought they had cornered the vessel, it would slip away and strike at another vulnerable target. 8 alien ships were destroyed and 12 others severely damaged before the Ranger's luck finally ran out. A coordinated attack by 6 vessels overwhelmed the scout ship's defenses and sent it spinning helplessly through space. The hull was breached in multiple locations, and the crew was forced to abandon their posts as the vessel began to break apart. Commander Zixthara surveyed the aftermath of the battle with deep concern. His fleet had achieved victory, but at a cost that should have been impossible. A single primitive scout ship had inflicted casualties that would have been acceptable only in a major fleet engagement. The implications were terrifying to contemplate. The medical bay of the Hegemony flagship hummed with alien technology as the 3 human survivors slowly regained consciousness. Jake Morrison opened his eyes to find himself strapped to a biomedical table, surrounded by creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of insect and machine. His head throbbed from the crash, but his training kicked in immediately. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Corporal Lisa Hayes, and Engineer Pete Collins had been pulled from the wreckage of the UES Ranger just before the ship's reactor went critical. The aliens had acted quickly to save them, though their motivations were clearly not humanitarian. The 3 humans were now prisoners aboard an enemy vessel, facing an uncertain fate. Supreme Admiral Kefraxi entered the medical bay with his entourage of military advisors and scientists. The towering alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. His exoskeleton was covered in ceremonial armor that marked his rank among the hegemony's military hierarchy. His compound eyes studied the humans with a mixture of curiosity and barely controlled rage. The alien commander had lost 8 ships and hundreds of crew members to a single primitive scout vessel. Such casualties were unacceptable by any military standard, and he needed answers. The destruction of his battle group would require explanation to the Hegemony Council, and he could not afford to appear weak or incompetent. Jake forced himself to remain calm as the aliens surrounded his table. His military training included extensive preparation for capture and interrogation scenarios. The key was to reveal nothing of military value while appearing to cooperate. He studied his captors carefully, noting their physical characteristics and equipment for future reference. The interrogation began with basic questions about human military structure and capabilities. Admiral Kethroxy spoke through a translation device that converted his clicking, buzzing language into recognizable human speech. The mechanical voice asked about fleet strengths, defensive positions, and weapon technologies. Jake responded with name, rank, and service number according to military protocol. He provided no additional information despite increasingly aggressive questioning from his captors. The aliens seemed frustrated by his refusal to cooperate, but they had not yet resorted to physical torture. Lisa Hayes watched the proceedings from her own restraint table, analyzing every detail of the alien behavior and technology. Her training as a communications specialist had taught her to observe and record information that might prove useful later. The aliens' equipment appeared advanced but not impossibly so, suggesting that human technology might be more competitive than initially believed. The aliens brought in specialists to examine the human prisoners. Scientists studied their biological makeup while intelligence officers analyzed their uniforms and equipment. The creatures seemed particularly interested in the humans' physical resilience and their ability to function under extreme stress during combat. Pete Collins remained silent during the initial questioning, but his engineer's mind was working constantly. He observed the alien technology with professional interest, noting design principles and energy signatures that might provide insights into their capabilities. The information could prove valuable if they ever managed to escape or communicate with Earth forces. Admiral Kethroxy grew impatient with the humans' refusal to cooperate. He ordered his interrogation specialists to increase the pressure, hoping to break their resistance through psychological manipulation. The aliens had extensive experience with conquered species, and most prisoners eventually provided the information they sought. The breakthrough came when Jake realized that the aliens' questions revealed their own assumptions about human military organization. They expected humanity to follow the same hierarchical structure used by most galactic civilizations. Their confusion about human tactics suggested they had never encountered an opponent with similar flexibility and adaptability. Jake decided to use the aliens' assumptions against them. He began to provide carefully selected information that would mislead rather than inform his captors. When asked about the Rangers' mission, he described it as a routine patrol by a standard reconnaissance unit. He emphasized that scout ships were considered expendable assets in human military doctrine. The aliens were disturbed by this revelation. In their experience, most species protected their advanced vessels and experienced crews. The idea that humans would send valuable personnel on dangerous missions with full knowledge they might not return suggested a military culture unlike anything they had encountered. Lisa added to the confusion by describing the human command structure in terms that emphasized decentralized decision-making and individual initiative. She explained that the Rangers' crew had acted independently without direct orders from higher command. This contradicted the aliens' understanding of military hierarchy and suggested a level of tactical flexibility they found deeply troubling. The interrogation specialists tried different approaches to extract more detailed information. They used drugs, psychological pressure, and technological scanning devices to penetrate the human's mental defenses. However, human military training included resistance techniques that proved surprisingly effective against alien methods. P.K. Collins provided the most disturbing information when he described the Rangers' weapon systems. Under pressure, he revealed that the scout ship's armament was considered outdated by current human standards. The magnetic accelerator cannons and missile systems that had destroyed 8 alien vessels were being phased out in favor of more advanced weapons. Admiral Kethraxi felt a chill run through his exoskeleton as he processed this information. If the humans' obsolete weapons could inflict such damage, what could their current military technology accomplish? The implications were staggering to contemplate. The aliens pressed for more details about Earth's defensive capabilities. Jake described a planetary defense network that included orbital platforms, ground-based installations, and mobile fleet units. He emphasized that Earth had been preparing for interstellar warfare for decades. Having detected alien presence in nearby systems through long-range sensors, Lisa revealed that human military doctrine assumed facing technologically superior opponents. She described training scenarios where human forces practiced fighting while outnumbered and outgunned. The aliens were shocked to learn that humans had spent centuries developing tactics, specifically designed to counter advanced alien technology. The interrogation continued for days, with the aliens becoming increasingly desperate for useful intelligence. Each answer from the human prisoners raised new questions and revealed assumptions that proved to be dangerously wrong. The humans' casual attitude toward casualties and their apparent willingness to sacrifice individual units for strategic advantage suggested a military culture that prioritized victory over survival. Pete Collins, under intense pressure, provided technical specifications that horrified his captors. The scout ship's reactor design was based on principles that the aliens had considered theoretically impossible. The humans had somehow developed technology that exceeded hegemony capabilities in several key areas. Admiral Kethraxi realized that his fleet had not encountered a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they had attacked a military power that had been preparing for this confrontation for generations. The humans' technology, tactics, and military culture represented a threat unlike anything the hegemony had faced in its long history of expansion. The interrogation sessions revealed that the destruction of the Ranger was not a victory but a catastrophic mistake. The aliens had awakened a sleeping giant that viewed their existence as a threat to be eliminated. The 3 human prisoners had provided enough information to terrify an entire galactic empire, and they had done so while appearing to cooperate with their captors. The final revelation came when Jake described the human response to first contact with hostile aliens. He explained that the destruction of the Ranger had triggered emergency protocols that would mobilize the entire human military machine. The aliens had not captured 3 random scouts but had instead declared war on a species that had been preparing for this moment for decades. The emergency council chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 alien species gathered around the massive holographic display. The circular room was designed to accommodate the various physiological needs of the hegemony's member races, with atmospheric controls and gravity adjustments for each delegation. Never before had such an urgent session been called to address a single enemy engagement. Admiral Kethraxi stood at the center of the chamber, his damaged fleet's battle recordings playing on the main display. The massive hologram showed the destruction of 8 hegemony vessels by a single human scout ship, each explosion captured in painful detail. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as their supposedly superior military technology was systematically dismantled by an enemy they had never encountered before, General Thrax of the Drachmath. Delegation slammed his armored fist against the table as the recording ended. The reptilian warrior's scales flared with aggressive coloration as he processed what he had witnessed. His species had built their reputation on military prowess, and the idea that some unknown aliens could outfight trained hegemony forces was deeply offensive to his warrior pride. Science Director Quinel of the Vortons studied the tactical data with analytical precision. Her species had contributed most of the advanced technology that made hegemony expansion possible, and she was deeply disturbed by the humans' apparent technological capabilities. The energy signatures from their weapons suggested principles That challenged current understanding of physics. The ethereal's representative, a being known only as the voice, communicated through telepathic projection that reached every mind in the chamber. The psychic species had attempted to read the captured human prisoners' thoughts during interrogation, but they had encountered mental barriers and thought patterns. Unlike anything in their extensive experience with alien minds, Ambassador Krill of the Zephyrians raised his crystalline form to address the assembly. His species had served as diplomats for the hegemony for over 2 centuries, successfully negotiating the surrender of hundreds of civilizations. The concept of a species that would fight to the death rather than accept reasonable terms was alien to his understanding of rational behavior. The debate that followed was intense and sometimes heated. Each species brought their own perspective on the human threat, but all agreed that the situation was unprecedented. The hegemony had built its power on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force would always prevail against primitive civilizations. General Thrax argued for immediate massive retaliation against the human homeworld. His military doctrine emphasized striking hard and fast to prevent enemies from organizing effective resistance. He proposed assembling the largest battle fleet in hegemony history and crushing human civilization before it could respond to the destruction of their scout ship. Science Director Quintal disagreed strongly with the general's aggressive approach. Her analysis of the battle recordings suggested that human technology was far more advanced than initial assessments had indicated. She recommended extensive study and preparation before any further military action against such a dangerous opponent. The voice projected disturbing images from the interrogation sessions. The ethereals had detected thought patterns that suggested the humans possessed a collective military consciousness that transcended individual awareness. The captured prisoners had demonstrated loyalty and discipline that indicated extensive psychological conditioning for warfare. Admiral Kethrexi provided additional details from his intelligence officer's analysis. The humans' weapons technology appeared to be based on principles that emphasized reliability and effectiveness over elegance. Their ship designs showed evidence of extensive combat experience and practical engineering that prioritized survivability over aesthetics. The military experts began dissecting every aspect of the human tactics and technology. They discovered that the scout ship's armor plating was arranged in patterns that maximized protection while maintaining mobility. The weapon systems showed evidence of field modifications that suggested extensive combat experience and practical innovation. The most disturbing revelation came from the hegemony's long-range sensor networks. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive energy signatures throughout human space that indicated military preparations on an unprecedented scale. The aliens realized that the destroyed scout ship was merely the first contact with a civilization that had been preparing for interstellar warfare. Intelligence Director Vixandra of the Silurians presented intercepted communication signals from human space. Her species specialized in electronic warfare and surveillance, and they had managed to decode fragments of human military transmissions. The messages revealed a military structure that was already mobilizing for full-scale war in response to the Rangers' destruction. The intercepted communications described human military units with designations that suggested massive numbers and advanced capabilities. References to battle fleets, marine expeditionary forces, and planetary defense networks indicated a military infrastructure that dwarfed anything the hegemony had previously encountered. The council members studied tactical analyses of human combat doctrine that had been extracted from the captured prisoners. Human military training appeared to emphasize individual initiative and adaptability in ways that contradicted standard military hierarchy. This decentralized approach allowed for rapid tactical adjustments that made their forces extremely difficult to predict or counter. General Thrax grew increasingly agitated as the evidence mounted. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through superior firepower and disciplined formations. The idea that chaotic human tactics could overcome organized military doctrine challenged everything he believed about warfare. The Vorton's technical Analysis revealed that human weapon systems were designed with brutal efficiency that prioritized maximum damage over sophisticated targeting. Their magnetic accelerator technology appeared to be based on principles that the hegemony had considered theoretically interesting but practically impossible to implement. The Council's debate continued for hours, as each species contributed their expertise to understanding the human threat. The Aquatic Consortium's representatives described sonar readings that suggested human ships were designed for stealth and surprise attacks rather than traditional fleet engagements. The Mechanical Collective's analysis indicated that human technology showed evidence of rapid innovation and field adaptation. The voice projected images of human military culture that had been extracted from the prisoners' minds. The Ethereals had glimpsed a civilization that had spent its entire existence fighting itself, developing increasingly sophisticated methods of warfare through constant conflict. Every human military doctrine assumed facing enemies of equal or superior technology. The final assessment was unanimous and terrifying. The hegemony faced an opponent that had been preparing for interstellar warfare for generations. Human military culture was built on assumptions of technological inferiority and numerical disadvantage, forcing them to develop tactics and strategies that could overcome superior opponents through innovation and determination. Admiral Kethraxi presented the Council's conclusions to the assembled representatives. The destruction of the Ranger had not been a victory but a catastrophic strategic error that had alerted humanity to the hegemony's existence. The humans were not a primitive species ready for conquest, but a military power that posed an existential threat to galactic stability. The Council voted to place all hegemony military forces on maximum alert and begin emergency preparations for a war unlike anything they had previously faced. The 12 species that had dominated the galaxy for centuries now found themselves confronting an enemy that might be capable of destroying everything they had built. Intelligence Officer Zaramind floated in her specialized chamber aboard the hegemony research vessel, her tentacles dancing across multiple control interfaces as she processed the latest intercepted human transmissions. The cephalopod's natural ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously made her species invaluable for intelligence work. But what she was discovering about human military culture filled her with a dread that penetrated her very core. The first breakthrough had come when her team successfully decoded human military communication protocols. The transmissions revealed a civilization that had turned warfare into both science and art, with military traditions that stretched back thousands of years. Every aspect of human society seemed designed to support their capacity for organized violence on a scale that defied comprehension. The intercepted training footage showed human soldiers enduring conditions that would kill most alien species. The creatures trained in environments with toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and crushing gravitational forces. They practiced combat scenarios while deprived of food, water, and sleep for periods that would drive other species insane. Zaramind studied recordings of human military exercises with growing horror. The aliens watched formations of soldiers charging across battlefields while explosive devices detonated around them. The humans seemed to thrive on chaos and violence, turning deadly situations into opportunities for tactical advantage. The most disturbing discovery was that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other. Their planet was scarred with evidence of countless wars, each conflict driving technological innovation and tactical development. The species had survived by becoming increasingly efficient at killing their own kind, creating a military culture that assumed every enemy was as dangerous as themselves. The intelligence reports revealed that human military doctrine was based on centuries of fighting opponents with equal or superior technology. Unlike the hegemony's approach of overwhelming primitive civilizations, humans had developed strategies for defeating enemies who possessed every possible advantage. Their entire military philosophy was built around the concept of victory through superior tactics and determination. The intercepted communications described training programs that would be considered torture by galactic standards. Human soldiers were subjected to psychological conditioning that eliminated fear and hesitation in combat situations. They were taught to function effectively while wounded, isolated, and facing impossible odds. Zermind's analysis of human weapons development revealed a disturbing pattern of innovation driven by necessity. Every human conflict had produced new technologies designed to overcome enemy advantages. Their weapons were not elegant or sophisticated but brutally effective, designed to function in the worst possible conditions. The aliens discovered that human military units were organized around principles that emphasized flexibility and individual initiative. Unlike the rigid hierarchies favored by most galactic civilizations, human forces could adapt their tactics in real time based on battlefield conditions. This decentralized approach made their military responses unpredictable and difficult to counter. The intercepted training materials showed humans practicing combat scenarios that assumed technological inferiority. They trained to fight enemies with better weapons, stronger armor, and superior numbers. The species had turned disadvantage into an advantage by becoming masters of asymmetric warfare. The most terrifying revelation came from intercepts of human strategic planning sessions. The destruction of the Ranger had triggered something called Protocol 7, a military directive that assumed first contact with hostile aliens. The humans were not seeking diplomatic solutions or peaceful coexistence, but were preparing for total war against an unknown enemy. Human military strategists had been planning for interstellar warfare for decades. They had developed weapons specifically designed to counter advanced alien technology, created tactics based on fighting technologically superior opponents, and established industrial capabilities that could rapidly convert their entire civilization to war production. The intelligence analysis revealed that humans had been detecting alien presence in nearby systems for years. Their military preparations were not random but specifically designed to counter the types of technology and tactics that galactic civilizations typically employed. The hegemony's attack had confirmed their worst fears about alien intentions. Zermind studied intercepted communications about human military recruitment and training. The species maintained massive standing armies supplemented by reserve forces that could be activated within hours. Every human received basic military training as part of their education, creating a population that was already prepared for warfare. The aliens discovered that human industrial capacity was designed to support extended military campaigns. Their manufacturing systems could be rapidly converted to produce weapons, ammunition, and military equipment on a scale that dwarfed anything the hegemony had previously encountered. The entire human economy was structured to support total warfare if necessary. The intercepted technical specifications revealed that human weapons development had focused on creating systems that could penetrate advanced defensive technologies. Their magnetic accelerator cannons were designed to overcome energy shields, while their missile systems incorporated guidance systems that could adapt to electronic countermeasures. The most disturbing aspect of human military culture was their attitude toward casualties. The intercepted communications revealed a species that accepted massive losses as an inevitable cost of warfare. They had developed strategies that assumed high casualty rates and maintained morale through psychological conditioning that emphasized duty over survival. Human military doctrine included detailed plans for fighting while outnumbered and outgunned. Their tactical manuals contained strategies for defeating enemies with superior technology through surprise attacks, guerrilla warfare, and psychological operations. The species had turned desperation into a tactical advantage. The intelligence reports revealed that human military units were trained to operate independently for extended periods, without support or resupply. They were taught to improvise weapons and equipment using local materials, turning any environment into a potential battlefield. This self-sufficiency made them extremely difficult to defeat through traditional siege tactics. Zermind's analysis of human communication patterns revealed a species that shared tactical knowledge across all military units. Unlike the compartmentalized approach favored by most galactic civilizations, humans maintained databases of combat experience that were accessible to every soldier. This collective military memory made their forces increasingly effective with each engagement. The intercepted strategic assessments showed that human military planners had analyzed every aspect of potential alien technology and tactics. They had identified weaknesses in hegemony ship designs, developed countermeasures for alien weapon systems, and created battle plans that assumed facing multiple enemy species simultaneously. The final revelation came when the aliens intercepted human intelligence reports about their own military capabilities. The humans had been studying hegemony forces for years, analyzing their tactics and technology through long-range observation. They knew exactly what they were facing and had prepared accordingly. The intelligence officer transmitted her findings to the Hegemony Council with a sense of impending doom. The humans were not just another primitive species, but a military machine that had been preparing for this confrontation for generations. Their entire civilization was designed for warfare on a scale that could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. The intercepted communications revealed that humanity viewed the hegemony's existence as a threat to their survival. The aliens had not just attacked a scout ship, but had declared war on a species that had spent millennia preparing for exactly this scenario. The humans were mobilizing their entire military capacity to eliminate what they perceived as an existential threat to their civilization. The long-range sensors aboard the Hegemony command ship began screaming warnings as massive energy signatures appeared at the edge of the system. Commander Zixtara stared at the tactical display with growing terror as more and more contacts materialized from hyperspace. The human response fleet was not the modest force he had expected, but a massive armada that dwarfed anything the Hegemony had ever assembled. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, her calm demeanor masking the fury that burned in her heart. The flagship of the 1st Expeditionary Force was a kilometer-long battle cruiser, bristling with weapons that represented the pinnacle of human military technology. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency as they prepared for the coming engagement. The human fleet consisted of over 200 vessels of various classes, each designed for specific aspects of space warfare. Unlike the Hegemony's approach of building massive ships for overwhelming firepower, the humans had created a balanced force that emphasized flexibility and tactical coordination. Every ship could operate independently while maintaining perfect integration with the overall battle plan. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded the Vanguard Squadron from the bridge of the UES Vengeance, a fast attack cruiser designed for hit-and-run operations. His ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic to alien observers, but were actually calculated to create maximum confusion among enemy forces. The humans had studied hegemony tactics extensively and knew exactly how to exploit their weaknesses. The alien fleet tried to form traditional battle lines as the humans approached, but they found themselves unable to predict enemy movements. The human ships scattered across the battlefield in small groups that struck simultaneously at multiple points. Each attack was precisely coordinated to overwhelm local defenses while avoiding concentrated enemy firepower. Admiral Thompson watched the tactical display as her forces executed the battle plan with mechanical precision. The humans had spent decades preparing for this confrontation, developing strategies that assumed facing technologically superior opponents. Their tactics were designed to neutralize enemy advantages through superior coordination and unpredictable maneuvers. The first exchange of fire lasted only minutes, but it demonstrated the vast difference between human and alien military doctrine. The hegemony ships fired massive energy beams that could destroy entire cities, but the humans avoided direct confrontation through constant movement and electronic warfare. Their weapons were smaller but far more accurate, targeting specific systems rather than attempting to overwhelm enemy defenses. Commander Zixtara realized that his fleet was fighting an opponent that operated under completely different principles. The humans did not seek glorious battles or dramatic victories, but focused on systematic destruction of enemy capabilities. Their attacks were calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimal risk, demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that bordered on the supernatural. The human ships employed psychological warfare as effectively as they used conventional weapons. They broadcast recordings of the Rangers' final battle on all frequencies, reminding the aliens of their humiliating defeat at the hands of a single scout ship. The messages were designed to undermine enemy morale and create doubt about the wisdom of continued resistance. Captain Mitchell led his squadron in a series of lightning attacks that crippled multiple alien vessels before they could respond effectively. His ships moved like predators, striking at vulnerable targets and disappearing before the enemy could organize a counterattack. The humans had turned space warfare into an art form that emphasized speed and precision over brute force. The alien commanders tried to adapt their tactics to counter the human approach, but they found themselves constantly outmaneuvered by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The humans had studied hegemony military doctrine extensively and knew exactly how their opponents would respond to different situations. Admiral Thompson coordinated the battle from her command center, managing dozens of individual engagements simultaneously. Her staff worked with inhuman efficiency, processing tactical data and adjusting the battle plan in real time. The humans had developed command and control systems that allowed them to manage complex operations with unprecedented precision. The hegemony fleet began to crumble under the relentless human assault. Ships that had served for centuries were destroyed within minutes by weapons they had never encountered before. The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a level of coordination that suggested a collective consciousness rather than individual units. The turning point came when human boarding parties began capturing alien vessels instead of destroying them. The Marines who stormed enemy ships demonstrated combat skills that terrified the alien crews. They moved through corridors with deadly efficiency, neutralizing resistance with weapons and tactics that seemed designed specifically for close-quarters combat. Commander Zixthara watched his flagship's defenses fail as human Marines breached the hull in multiple locations. The creatures that invaded his ship were heavily armored and moved with mechanical precision, eliminating his crew with weapons that seemed to ignore alien defensive systems. The humans had prepared for every aspect of space warfare, including the capture of enemy vessels. The battle reached its climax as the remaining hegemony ships attempted to retreat from the system. The humans had anticipated this response and positioned forces to intercept fleeing vessels. Their pursuit was relentless and methodical, designed to prevent any alien ship from escaping to warn their home systems. Admiral Thompson stood before the holographic display as the last enemy resistance collapsed. The human fleet had achieved complete victory with minimal casualties, demonstrating tactical superiority that would have been impossible without decades of preparation. The aliens had underestimated not just human technology, but the military culture that had created it. The surviving alien commanders found themselves prisoners aboard human ships, facing the same fate that had befallen Jake Morrison and his crew. The humans treated their captives with professional courtesy, but made it clear that resistance was futile. They had achieved victory through superior tactics and preparation rather than overwhelming force. Captain Mitchell reported to Admiral Thompson as the battle concluded. His squadron had captured multiple alien vessels intact, providing valuable intelligence about hegemony technology and tactics. The humans had not just won a battle, but had gained strategic advantages that would prove crucial in the coming war. The final phase of the engagement involved the systematic destruction of alien installations throughout the system. The humans demonstrated their ability to project power across interstellar distances, eliminating every trace of hegemony presence with clinical efficiency. They had turned first contact into a strategic victory that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Thompson recorded her final report as the human fleet prepared to return to Earth. The message was simple and direct. First contact protocols had been successful, and the galaxy now understood that humanity was not a species to be conquered, but a force of nature to be feared. The humans had proven that technological superiority meant nothing against tactical brilliance and unwavering determination. The surviving aliens would carry word back to their home systems that a new power had emerged in the galaxy. The humans had demonstrated that they were not just capable of defending themselves, but possessed the military capacity to threaten the very existence of the hegemony. The age of easy conquest was over, and the galaxy would never be the same.